So what do you want to do?
I don't know. We don't have an intro. Welcome, everybody, to the Glazier Gamble. This is episode 35 of our sports section with Michael Glazier and Joe Rybold, and we have some good stuff for you today. Not a lot of information just because, Super Bowl's over. Basketball is not really at an important time. It's about time for the All-Star break, so it's a little bit of a dead time, but we still have some stuff for you. We got some Timberwolves news because, Minnesota-based, and we got Vikings news, and then we have some Deshaun Watson news, and, that's pretty much it. Anything else that we can think of during that time or that, comes to mind. Otherwise, it's just going to be a quick one for you today. Plus, we do have one sponsor for you today as well. First thing I want to go talk to you about is the Minnesota Timberwolves. They have extended technical before the game even starts, Patrick Beverley.
Yeah, it was a fun little. They were so flat. They were so tired. I went to the game last night, and they were just flat. They were tired. You could tell. Obviously,
it was a back-to-back.
Yeah, I mean, they naturally don't play good in back-to-backs. Pat Bev played good, hit a lot of his open shots. Cat obviously played great, and Jaden McDaniels played really good. So everyone else sucked.
Anthony Edwards is definitely either still hurt or in a slump.
Yeah,
because
it was a rough game just in general for a lot of people.
And then Pat Bev poked the bear with Gary Trent before the game.
Yeah,
fighting with his feet.
They were just waiting. They were fighting for tip-off positioning.
Yep, and Gary Trent had his foot over the half-court line.
Yeah,
and Pat Bev was trying to say no, we're supposed to each be on one half.
And then Pat Bev put his foot in front of Gary Trent's foot, and then they were playing footsie.
Can't remember who was clapping in Pat Bev's face, but he just stared him down. He's like, "You gonna keep clapping?" And the guy immediately stopped.
So some bigger guy was coming down the lane, and Pat Bev was weak side help. So Pat Bev was weak side help. He was probably between the free throw line, the free throw line and the box, right in that range. And some bigger dude, obviously Pat Bev's not big, so
right,
everyone's basically bigger than him. And so he comes up, and Pat Bev just gives him a nice little forearm to the chest, and the guy recoils. So the guy goes by him and then immediately turns around and full force pushes box out. Pat Bev just goes flying, and so Pat Bev got a comment. They reviewed it, Pat Bev, because it was unnecessary, whatever. So a common foul on Pat Bev because there's no need for him to do that on the guy coming down the lane, and then a flagrant one on the other guy.
Oh yeah,
retaliating.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you retaliate, you're gonna have the more severe penalty.
Yeah.
So absolutely gonna get a flagrant there.
Yeah, it's a huge flagrant. So yeah, no, 1 year, 13 million, which is about what he's getting this year too. So it's very similar to this year. But I'm glad he's around.
And then Alex Rodriguez posted an image of himself smoking a cigar in the locker room with a emoji of a basketball, a plane, or something else, and he was wheeling and dealing today. It sucks that the Wolves are finally an exciting and fun team to watch before they go to Seattle. But
here's a fun little fact. There are only 6 teams in the NBA that have more wins than the Timberwolves.
That's a fun fact.
Yeah.
The Raptors are one of them. They should have won, but with the way that they were playing, they wouldn't have beaten the Magic.
Yeah, they were coasting. They're going into All-Star break.
They would have lost to the Magic. They would have lost to the Rockets.
They also just
lost to the Thunder.
They also just played their ass off in the Charlotte game right before. So they
needed more of a break than a turnaround.
Yeah.
And with Ant getting hurt at the end of the game.
Yeah.
It was a series of unfortunate events that all occurred all at the same time.
Yeah.
I still haven't seen that show on Netflix, by the way.
What show?
Series of Unfortunate Events.
I haven't either.
And Neil Patrick Harris plays the guy that Jim Carrey plays in the movie. Yeah, I haven't seen it, but it looks good. It got multiple seasons. Anyway, that is actually all we have for basketball talk. There's other things. People keep talking about James Harden. Everybody is copying what we said now. They're all talking about James Harden being
It happens.
They're all talking about James Harden being a quitter.
Oh, you got your word in.
They're saying they're copying what we said.
Yeah.
Everybody was talking about how Ben Simmons was the problem, and then all of a sudden we said James Harden was the issue in this, and now James Harden is either that or sports networks just talk out of both sides of their mouth, as opposed to us, who we just provided a straight opinion. But otherwise, people are talking about that. I could care less. Honestly, I don't want to talk about
the fact that the Lakers, how we talked about AD And now that's the talk. Right
now the talk is should the Lakers have traded Anthony Davis?
My opinion is they should have traded Anthony Davis.
Said that last week, and now all of a sudden, should the Lakers have moved Anthony Davis? And Stephen A. Smith is the one. It was his idea. Yeah, right. Stephen A. Smith scours the internet for obscure podcasts, smaller pods. And all we can do is be like, hey, look at the date that we posted ours.
Yeah,
that's all we could do. They're saying the same thing we did. And yes, they should have. They should have done what the Portland Trailblazers did, is what we said. We said they should have picked one player, probably LeBron, and then tried to move every single other player that you could have.
Right.
Which I saw some Lakers fans
should have done the Westbrook for Wall trade.
Yeah.
Should have done AD, traded AD. He's 28 right now, 29, something like that. And you're not going to get a better offer for him than you would. So,
no.
And then
he gets hurt.
Injured.
Yeah. And then I saw some Lakers fans talking about how Malik Monk is right now the second best player on the team. And even when healthy, he's better than AD. And I was like, what are you smoking? I get California weed is legal, but you're lacing it with something because, oh my gosh. If you really think Malik Monk is an untradeable piece, you're more lost than I thought. Anyway, I said I didn't want to talk about Lakers.
Yeah. It's a popular thing. It's like we talked about Ben Simmons for like 10 weeks straight. Like it's just
we talked about Russ for 3 or 4 weeks.
Part of the sports world. We gotta
cover the stuff even if we don't want to talk about it. Well, if we did that means we want to cover the Super Bowl. Is Sean McVay retiring? Aaron Donald retiring? Is Matt Stafford a dick? But anyway, that is actually all we have for basketball talk. So now, before we talk about the NFL, we just want to send you a quick word from our sponsor this week. Now let's talk about some NFL talk. Majority of what we'll be talking about this time around is Vikings. Do you want to talk about Super Bowl this week? Because if so, that'll be the first thing we should talk about.
Let's see here. Everyone was saying it came down to like the refs. The Bengals fans are like the refs, blah, blah, blah. I think what it comes down to, and whether they like to admit it or not, but us Vikings fans, we can blame the refs all the time, but in reality, it's probably our O-line, it's probably our defense, whatever, stuff like that. The Bengals O-line has been a problem. Was the problem the entire year. He's the third most sacked quarterback in NFL history this season. It came down to that in the final play. If their O-line would have stayed intact, Aaron Donald wouldn't have gotten to Joe Burrow. Jamar Chase was wide open down the sideline. Can't blame the refs in any situation. Mainly because there's other instances throughout the game where you could win or lose.
There's usually so many little things that happen throughout the game that make it break even. There's a missed holding call that you got a first down that you would have had to punt that you didn't even look at. Yeah. Those sorts of things add up and tend to balance out. So the refs are one of those things you just can never blame. There's only a couple teams that really benefit from the refs and only a couple teams that really get screwed by the refs throughout history. It's the Packers, Patriots,
and then the Seahawks
and football team are a couple that just consistently get
the Commanders over. You mean? Sorry,
Commanders. Yeah, they've consistently gotten screwed over all the time. Otherwise, most other teams sit in that middle of 50% of plays go their way. Well, and on the Rams, Super Bowl winning team, offensive tackle was on the Bengals, and the Bengals didn't want to pay him. Right. Andrew Whitworth.
Yeah, or Kevin Zeitler, even like all these great O linemen.
Yeah, they could have, and they could have drafted Penei Sewell. Obviously, Penei Sewell wouldn't have had the impact Jamar Chase had, but Penei Sewell looked good, and Jamar Chase was insanely good. So I don't think like picking Chase over Sewell was the problem. Considering that they have like the 4th or 5th most cap space this offseason, that tells me they probably had a good amount of cap space this season. They probably could have at least signed one extra lineman. The big thing is that the Bengals are already trying to figure out a way to get Brandon Scherff. Vikings have dibs, so sorry. Yeah. That's just not happening.
Yeah, that would be incredible.
Yeah, Brandon Scherff is the number 1 targeted lineman this offseason because if the Commanders were to
tag him again,
tag him again, he's getting paid what quarterbacks are getting paid. It's just an insane amount, and it's fully guaranteed immediately off the cap. So it's pretty difficult for them to tag Scherff again, which is why Scherff is going to be most likely on a new team, and he will be getting. We'll just say it now. He's going to be the highest paid lineman in football. I've been a fan of him since the draft. I wanted him badly. Outside of that, with the Super Bowl, I mean, I think it was overall the game wasn't refereed poorly. The better team, in my opinion, won.
Yeah, I said at the start, I was like, my head says the Rams, but my heart says the Bengals. So.
Yeah, everybody was rooting for the Bengals. That's why people were upset about the outcome. The common thread about the report about the Super Bowl was there was no villain. Everybody was like, oh, there was no villain this game, so it was just kind of like a feel good Super Bowl. And to me, it was more like it was two teams that a lot of people don't really care about.
Yeah.
So there were probably villains. Like, in my opinion, Jalen Ramsey is probably the closest thing to a villain in the game.
Sure.
I'm sure there's plenty of people that didn't want Jalen Ramsey to win, but nobody cares about the Rams or the Bengals except for people in Ohio and not even people in California, because more people show up for the other teams. I think it was awesome. Stafford got a ring, not a Hall of Famer yet, but now his trajectory is a little bit more there.
I mean, I don't know. I think it does help his. Sherman Scales was like, is he a Hall of Famer right now? Like, if you were to stop it, no.
Even if he only wins one ring for the rest of his career, though, but keeps up these stats, and now his winning percentage goes over 500 for his career with the Rams, then yes, he is. Sticking with Stafford, let's just talk about it. Stafford watched a girl fall off an 8-foot stage during the celebration.
Yeah.
She fell, and he immediately goes, "Oh God," and turns and walks away.
Yeah, and his wife goes to check.
And his wife went to check on her, and he basically said, like, "Nope, you deal with that." Yeah. While he was drinking, he was very drunk,
very heavily intoxicated. Yeah,
but in my opinion, that's not an excuse. She broke her spine, and
it's fine. They're paying for it.
Stafford and his wife apologized, and they're covering the entire expense. I don't know if you saw, but she made like 4 tweets about it, retweeted her GoFundMe. I get not being happy about it, but I mean, it was all her. Like,
it wasn't like Stafford pushed her.
She didn't get pushed. She wasn't paying attention, and she knew she was high up. I don't know. I think that I didn't think that how she handled it was positive. And then Stafford apologized and paid for it, and people still aren't happy.
Right.
So what else do you want? I tweeted that out. Wait, what else do you want him to do? He can't. If you need him to go back in time, provide him that time machine, because he can't change what happened.
Right.
He was intoxicated, so his decisions impaired. It just showed, like, he's probably not a very empathetic human being.
I mean, so his wife, who had a clear mind, she immediately approached and did what she could from 8 feet above her. And also, I guess in Stafford's defense or whatever, how's Stafford going to get down there immediately?
Right.
And
I saw a lot of people just mad that he didn't ask. Like, oh,
if she fell and did hurt her spine, you don't want someone who is heavily intoxicated to handle you at that point.
By the time his wife got to the edge, somebody was assisting her. She was getting help already. People are just mad that he didn't go, "Are you okay?" So, we've talked about this before. If you were to meet your favorite celebrity, guarantee you they would no longer be your favorite celebrity because they're probably an asshole. Stafford's an asshole. Maybe he is. Maybe he isn't. Go ahead and think he's an asshole. If you want to take the financial standpoint, as soon as he tries to help from an insurance standpoint, he becomes liable. There are so many different sides to this. He did everything he can now. He's apologizing and paying for it.
Yeah.
In my opinion, he didn't have to apologize. If anything, he's just apologizing to save face.
Well, he's apologizing that, like, I'm sorry that happened to you.
I'm sorry that happened. Let me do what I can.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's pretty ridiculous, the reaction, but it's the internet. So they had to get mad about it, and instead of making sure this lady was okay, they were all too busy attacking Stafford. Not a single person attacking Stafford said, "I wonder if she's okay."
Right. She had to tweet and be like, I'm fine, blah blah blah.
Right. None of you people attacking Stafford cared. So, like, they would have done the same thing in that situation, and they're all just virtue signaling to make themselves feel better.
Right.
And it's sports Twitter, so instead of making sure that lady was okay and then celebrating the Super Bowl win, they're all too worried about attacking Stafford and attacking Patrick Mahomes' brother and girlfriend. That's it for the Super Bowl talk, but we can stick with Rams kind of when we get to the Vikings talk. The first topic, though, Deshaun Watson talking, and his agent came out saying that there are two teams he's very interested in, which, before it was wherever Brian Flores goes, and it was Miami only, and it was Miami and Denver.
And now a report came out where the agent's like, there's no validity to this, but where there's smoke, there's fire. So
but now all of a sudden, instead of Miami, Flores, and Denver, it's Bucks and Vikings.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't know what he wants. He just wants the attention, and he wants to be talked about.
Yeah, he wants the attention. He wants out.
He just doesn't want to be in
thinking
Houston.
A new team will kind of push everything away. It'll be positive news.
But yeah, the Bucks and the Vikings were those two teams. Bucks, I hope they are the ones out of the. If he goes to either of those two teams, I hope it's the Bucks.
Yeah.
This is a player that even if he signs or gets traded, first of all, you're going to give up a huge amount of draft capital. And if he does end up going to jail or getting suspended, you don't get any of that back. There is a good chance that he is not only suspended, but in jail next season. Yeah. By the end of next season. The legal battle won't be solved by the time the season starts. So if he's not suspended, he will be able to play, because this is going to be a huge legal battle. But once that legality has gone through, he might be in jail for decades. Like, we don't know how long he's going to be in jail for. He's extremely wealthy, so probably only like a year plus probation. I as a Vikings fan, the amount you have to give up for Deshaun Watson, you already can't build a defense around Kirk with Kirk's contract, and Deshaun costs more. Plus, you'll still be paying part of Kirk's. If you traded for Deshaun Watson, you are a 3-win team anyway, because you have to cut a bunch of players, disable your future. Trading for Deshaun would be a terrible, terrible decision unless Houston takes the entirety of the salary, of his remainder of his salary, and they say, if he goes to jail, you can have your draft picks back.
Which isn't going to happen.
Which isn't going to happen. So if I wouldn't touch this trade with a 10-foot pole, 30-foot pole, whatever, a 1-inch pole like myself.
What a 22-foot pole.
A 22, yeah, one for each woman. Yeah. I mean, so you went with that. I went with the small penis joke, the 1-inch pole. But yeah, I wouldn't.
We're still talking about Deshaun Watson here. I don't.
I wouldn't touch a trade for Deshaun with a 22-foot pole. That's absurd.
I saw someone that says, "Would you trade Kirk in 2 firsts for him?" And I was like, "Absolutely not."
Yeah, you and I both responded to that same tweet.
Yeah, I was like, "No."
Yeah. And I basically said what I just said, which was they can't build a team with Kirk's contract. How do you expect them to build a team with Kirk and Deshaun's contract? It won't make sense. It doesn't make sense. I don't want Deshaun I understand they've got questionable guys like Kareem Hunt went from the Chiefs. Could you imagine if the Chiefs still had Kareem Hunt? They would be so much more terrifying. But instead they cut him because of his off-field issues, and then he went to the Browns, and the Browns are considered one of the best running attacks in football. Yeah. Like, there are good players that have off-field issues. Joe Mixon was just in the Super Bowl.
Tyreek Hill.
You have all these guys. So I understand there are guys out there that have off-field issues. I don't want Deshaun Watson because his is more than an off-field issue. He is allegedly a full-on criminal and serial molester, rapist, whatever. Right. Whatever word you want to use, allegedly. I wouldn't want to deal with that, and I hope the Vikings listen to this podcast like Stephen A. Smith does.
You're right.
And say, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. We will not touch Deshaun, just like Deshaun shouldn't have touched those girls. Anyway.
Another thing that has, I'll just throw in this next one. The Chicago Bears have a defensive lineman named Akiem Hicks.
Akiem Hicks, yeah.
And he's a free agent.
Yeah, he is.
He's expected to be targeted by the Seahawks, 49ers, the Chargers, and the Vikings.
If the 49ers get him, I'm going to be pissed. They don't need defensive line help. They don't need front seven help. Get out of here.
Right.
If the 49ers get him, I'm going to be so upset.
And if you think about
the Colts are going to put him next to Buckner. They need him.
The Seahawks.
They need him.
They need him, but they're also horrible.
Yes.
So if you're Akiem Hicks, you're like, dude, I'm old, right? I'm old in my career. Do I want to go to the Seahawks, who basically have no chance at winning anything? Niners, Chargers, Vikings. I mean, I could see all of them.
I think Chargers makes a ton of sense. Chargers and Vikings, he's going to get more play time, as opposed to Niners. He'll be on more of a rotation. Right. So guarantee he probably stays healthy all season if he goes to the Niners. And he still has a good chance to win. Vikings and Chargers, it's like, you're going to play 3 downs.
The Niners also plan to move on from Jimmy G. So are you going to have that same success on the offensive side of the ball? I don't know.
They're run first. I think Trey Lance can handle.
Yeah.
I think an average quarterback can be successful in San Francisco. So as long as Trey Lance is at least average, I think they'll be successful because they have 3 running backs that always do well. They have Deebo Samuel. They have and they have an incredible defense. It's hard for me to see the Niners falling off at all, even if moving on from Jimmy G. I think Akiem Hicks highest chance of winning is if he goes to the Niners, but it's not fair. Right. I think Chargers would be smart, and I think Vikings would be amazing just because, like we said it, Vikings are most likely moving to a 3-4. Akiem Hicks has been playing a 3-4 for multiple years now, and he can play the nose tackle, and he can play the 3-4 defensive end. I'm all for Akiem Hicks coming to the Vikings. Obviously, you'd be stupid to say I don't want him. Any team would be better with Akiem Hicks on.
And poor Bradbury having to go up against him in practice every day.
It would just be proof that Bradbury needs to get moved on from.
Yeah.
But yeah,
he's one person
I love Akiem Hicks. I
the
think
Vikings go up against. Dalvin can't do anything against the Bears. That's just what it is. Akiem Hicks just eats him alive. It's just one of those things. Dalvin can't do anything against the Bears. So.
Before this season started, we did an all NFC North roster, like the best if we were to make the best roster we could out of the NFC North teams, who would they pick? And both of us had Akiem Hicks on our list. We say he's the best defensive lineman in the NFC North. Akiem Hicks, free agent, lots of teams should go for him. I wouldn't be surprised if he signs elsewhere outside of those 4 teams. If I were him, I would pick the Chargers because you still get use. You're going to get a lot of money. You're going to have a good chance to win, and you get the good weather. The next topic, we'll go over the tight end free agent class, and then we're going to hop into the Vikings talk, and then we'll send you on our way.
I saw this tweet earlier that said the tight end free agency is going to be wild. So let me just name drop some of these players. A lot of them are older, but a lot of them are still very good tight ends. And I think the tight end is a very unique position because the tight end can be a huge part of your offense, and the Kelceys, the Kittles, the Wallers, Mark Andrews. But they're also, like, tight ends can be crucial in other ways. Zach Ertz, Jimmy Graham, Gronkowski, Uzoma, Ebron, Gerald Everett, Jared Cook, Mo Alley Cox, Robert Tonyan, Ferkser, OJ Howard, Hayden Hurst, Evan Ingram, David Njoku, I think Dallas Schultz is, Tyler Conklin. Like, all these are, like, very serviceable tight ends. So it's going to be kind of crazy to see where these kind of like middle tight ends that can, and one of them is going to blow up. That's just kind of what happens throughout the year. So
I think out of all those, Howard, I think, is the best chance to see some growth, take a step forward.
Howard,
because he's always had 2 other tight ends to compete with.
Right.
Always.
Right. Cameron Brate's always been in front of him.
Yeah. And then you mentioned Evan Ingram, I think, is just too injury prone to be excited about him. Uzoma, I think, is going to go back to the Bengals.
Team captain, right? He's like the
I don't think Tanyan's great. I think Tanyan's kind of the product of a system and quarterback.
Right. But I mean, like, there's a lot of those names are like, all right, they did well. Like, they can help a team. Whether they're not the big names, they're still it's still a good you're going to see 10 tight ends sign in free agency, and that's just something you don't normally see. Because all those guys, none of those guys are going to go unsigned except maybe and they're starter level tight ends.
Yeah.
And so
I don't know if I feel that way. I know a lot of people feel that way about Ferkser, but I don't.
Oh yeah, I know. I mean, Ferkser is one I just threw in there.
But yeah, I think Jimmy Graham is the only person on that entire list that I could see going unsigned. I think everybody else gets a contract somewhere. A couple of those guys are definitely 1-year guys, prove-it deals.
Right.
But, I mean, there's also a couple of those guys on that list that you could lock. Like, Uzoma is going to get locked down.
Right. I think Mo Alley Cox could definitely return to the Colts in a multi-year.
Mo Alley Cox should definitely get a multi-year contract. OJ Howard.
Hayden Hurst is an unbelievable blocker. Like, he's
very good.
A hustle guy, too. So
Jack Conklin could get – or Tyler Conklin, I mean.
David Njoku's one of those, like, intriguing receiving prospects. Like,
right. He's Evan Ingram with less speed and less injuries. I think if I'm with the Vikings – I give one of those guys a test. You don't know what Irv's going to do.
Yeah, you don't know what Irv's going to do. If you can get Tyler Conklin back at a reasonable price, do it.
Right, but I mean, if you could get Njoku or OJ Howard,
right.
I think I'd rather. Or if you could get Hurst, I would. Could you imagine Hurst? That would help our offensive line so much.
Oh yeah, Hurst would be amazing, and especially with like what David Morgan II did. with like a receiving first threat, and he was the kind of the blocker. He was
DM 2-3. Oh, that's exciting. Yeah, you don't normally see that, so that's really cool. And the tight end class for like the NFL draft isn't that great. Could be good.
Yeah, I heard something along the lines of like, there's no elite quarterback, there's no first round running backs, there's just a lot of great depth.
I liked a tweet that saw that, so maybe
that was it. Maybe that's what I saw.
It was from Matt Miller. He used to work for Bleacher Report. He talked about that and how he broke down. He also broke down like round 1, there's good talent here. Round 2, like there's a couple elite players like Aiden Hutchinson and Evan Neal.
This would be a great Spielman draft, is what you're saying.
It'd be a great one because Spielman would trade down and none of the guys would hit. He wouldn't take the actual 3rd and 4th rounders that are going to be the guys you want this year. He's going to trade down into the 7th and get the guys that are projects. I think this is a great draft to trade out of the 1st, or like trade out of the 1st and get an extra 2nd and 3rd, something like that, or trade all your 5th, 6th, and 7th to get an extra 3rd or two extra 4ths. Like, I think that's
that
3rd and 4th round. Day 2 draft is going to be
early
nuts.
Day 3. Sure.
That's what I would try to go this year. One of the people that's going to have to worry about that is KOC.
Yeah.
Kevin Oconnell, new Vikings head coach, only the 10th coach in Vikings history.
Yeah, what's been our era? Childress, who was Tice,
Leslie Frazier,
Green,
Brad Childress, Mike Tice, Leslie Frazier, and then Mike Zimmer. Now Kevin Oconnell. None of them are as good as Bud Grant, but maybe Kevin will. But yeah, Kevin Oconnell, officially the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, which is awesome. They signed him. People were worried. Some people were worried that Sean McVay was going to retire and that Kevin Oconnell would take over and then the Vikings would be left without any of the guys that they wanted. Kevin Oconnell took his time because he wanted time to relax with his family. He wanted to celebrate the Super Bowl win. So the people that were worried were just worried because it's the Vikings, and that's the sort of thing that would happen. Yeah, but he's already got a good staff set up here. I wrote them all down. Vikings head coach, Oconnell. Quarterback coach is Chris O'Hara. Formerly was the Rams offensive assistant coach. The assistant quarterback coach is Gerard Johnson. You probably remember that because I believe he was a former quarterback, but he was also the Colts quarterback coordinator. Our running back coach is Curtis Modkins, who was the running back coach of the Broncos with Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon. So I think that's a big positive.
Yeah,
wide receiver, Keenan McCardell.
The only person to be retained, I believe.
He is currently the only one signed that has been retained. Tight end coach is Brian Angelicchio, who was the Panthers tight end coach. The offensive line coach is Chris Cooper, and the assistant offensive line coach is Justin Rashadi.
Yeah, we need
both
all the
came
help
from
we
the
can
Broncos.
Get. Yep.
Broncos assistant coach. Yes, we do.
Line.
And the Broncos offensive line has gotten better every year. They weren't necessarily stellar every year, but they improved every year.
Right, and
I think that's the sign of a good coach.
Yeah, we got some pieces on our O-line that are very good. So, yeah. I mean,
and it sounds like they've retained most of the scouting department, and I think that's always big. Defensive coordinator Ed Donatel, Broncos defensive coordinator. Yeah. So 4 guys from the Broncos so far. Defensive line coach Chris Rumpf, that was the Bears defensive line coach. And then we do not have a linebackers coach, defensive back coach, or special teams coordinator yet. We also don't have an offensive coordinator yet. But assistant head coach is Mike Pettin, who previously was the Bears senior defensive advisor.
Yeah, and a former Browns head coach.
And former Packers defensive coordinator.
Yeah. Let's see here. So the Ed Donatel, that's a big coordinator position. He worked under Vic Fangio for over 10 years.
I believe he's 61 years old.
Yeah, very different in age range, but it's good to have kind of like to have some senior minds, a young coach. So
you can't have everybody be a young
gun.
New mindset. Like you got to, in a corporate business, they all preach diversity, culture. Like you want to have the more opinions from varying backgrounds that you have, the higher success you have. That's why Google has skyrocketed, because they started hiring everyone from a different background, and all of a sudden they just launched.
Sure.
Now every company wants to do the same thing. When I used to work for a tech company, they did this. They preached diversity. Yeah, I mean, whether it's race, culture, age, gender. That's why, I mean, I would love to get a female background here, just for have an assistant coach, even if she's not one of these linebackers coach, special teams.
Sure.
Like if we can get an assistant or somebody that's, just a different background, it would be nice. Yeah.
And another thing, Ed Donatel has, for the last 12 years, he has been working in a 3-4 defense. However, before that, he did have 3 or 4 years where he worked in a 4-3. So, I mean, I don't really know what we're going to do. I'd assume he's going to stick with what he's done more recently, and majority has had success with in the 3-4. But I think it also opens that since he's done both kind of schemes, he can utilize the players in different ways. And that being more so, KOC, Cock had his press conference today, and he did name drop some people, or some of our vets along the lines of Harrison Smith, Eric Kendricks, and Anthony Barr, who's actually a free agent. But it's interesting him name dropping those players, especially Anthony Barr, since he is a free agent, as like people that he sees as good fits for our defensive scheme. I think that's interesting. And then as far as Mike Pettin goes, in regards to like the Colts assistant GM that we got or something, fans are like, no, he's bad. He's horrible. Ryan Grigson, I want to say is his name, but like him and Mike Pettin, everyone's like, oh, he's been so bad in his other jobs. It's like you said, another mind. Mike Pettin's had a lot of success as a defensive coordinator. He was
a fall guy in Cleveland.
Yeah,
he was just the fall guy. I think he's better than what is portrayed.
I don't know. I'm fine with getting all these, like, the more minds you can get here, the better. And I'm welcome Mike Pettin. He's part of our team. He's part of our staff. So
yeah, I'm fine with it. I think if that's what they want, we said it, with a new regime, whatever decision they make, we just support whatever they say.
Stand behind.
The whole thing is to be doing something different.
Yeah, in my opinion, there's probably two people on our roster that I would try to burn this new regime to the ground if they got rid of. And that'd be Justin Jefferson or Brian O'Neill. You could get rid of anybody else, and I'd be like, all right, that's weird, but I'll stand behind it. So
yeah, I think those are the only two untouchables on offense, which sounds crazy because people would be like, Dalvin, Thielen.
Dalvin's like, here's another fun fact. Dalvin is actually 7th all time in yards per game.
I believe it.
Like 86 yards. Jim Brown has like 104.
But that's the thing, though, is like people would be like, you really would be okay with them getting rid of Dalvin or Thielen? It's like they're both expensive contracts.
Thielen's like 16 mil.
Right, they're both expensive contracts. Thielen is definitely like a red zone target, but he's lost a lot of the deep play. So you got guys like KJ that are biting at his ankles to take over, and Justin Jefferson's already at number 1. Thielen's a number 2 already.
Amir Smith-Marset can get more time. Like he's expendable, and that sucks to say, but
my thing is Madison has proven that he can't step into the 1. So you would have to draft a high running back if you were to get rid of Dalvin. If they decided to get rid of him, that's the type of guy to be like, that's weird, but if that's what you want, you have a plan. They must have a plan.
Yeah.
Defense, I don't think there's really any untouchable, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Kendricks would be my untouchable, but I mentioned it last week. If they do move to a 3-4, he might be better being moved.
Yeah.
It just depends. If they keep Barr, I think Kendricks will succeed because he'll have somebody that's like a more natural middle linebacker in a 3-4. I also think Kendricks is smart enough.
They've played with each other for so long too. They know what the others' capabilities are, what they can do, what they expect them to do. They've played together through college even too. So
I just don't think any defensive player is really untouchable, which is also crazy because like I love Harrison Smith. Some of these guys just that were untouchable in the past are no longer untouchable. Yeah. I wanted to make another Deshaun Watson joke there. You hear that, Deshaun? Everyone's untouchable. I don't know. I don't really have anything else to say about Kevin Oconnell except my expectations are almost as high as my hopes.
He did mention Kirk. I wanted to say the thing they talked about with Kirk. So obviously Kwesi and KOC were up there, and they asked him. One of the guys was like, "Kevin, do you is Kirk
legally take Kirk to be your wife?
Yeah, is Kirk Cousins going to be your quarterback for 2022?" And he said, "Well, Kirk's under contract." He's like, "Kirk's under contract here. I've talked to him. Like, I expect to do the things, create a system to utilize the stuff that he does right and that make him excel in those areas." And then he immediately switched to, it's 11. We got 11 people out there. It's not a quarterback that's going to win the game. It's all 11 guys that are out there. Yeah. Make a system that's going to make all of them excel. So
the quarterback is the key piece, but he's one of 11. A source close to Kevin did say that they are interested in extending Kirk's contract. If you're a Vikings fan and you're depressed about the fact they currently have a top 3 quarterback in franchise history behind the helm.
Yeah, a lot of reports came out that that Kirk would be Kirk's not interested in taking a pay cut, and I believe it if it's this one, if you're talking about this 1 year, like I believe that if you're talking about this 1 year, like why would he be like, it'd be like, I'm under contract for this year, we signed this deal, you wanted this to happen, but I also think that report is misleading because it also didn't talk about extensions. I think an extension is the way for him to get his number down, not just.
I think a restructure. A restructure would be best, where we can add a year on, move a lot of the guaranteed cap away to the next year. I think. I mean, that's what you do. Yeah, and an extension wise, be like you have the 45 guaranteed or 35 of the 45 is guaranteed. When he hits a certain point, it's all going to be guaranteed, but you move that number into a chunk of like this year, and then the next 2 years or whatever is not as hefty. And then I think you make up for the money and incentives. Take us to the Super Bowl and you get a big bonus. Take us to the NFC Championship and get a bonus. 45
right now. Say hypothetically you give him the 2 extra years and 100 million total. Mm-hmm. It's like you've got the 45 million this year. That means his next 2 years is averaged at like 27 and a half.
Right. Which is much more.
Yeah. And you're going to pay him the 45 this year anyway.
I'm not saying this because it's Kirk. I feel this way about every quarterback in football.
Oh, absolutely. Derek Carr's supposed to get like 40 now.
A lot of these guys, yes, they deserve it. They've earned it. But when they don't end up not winning the Super Bowl or not even making it to the Super Bowl, they also need to understand that they are the reason why. Like if the Chiefs again don't make it to the Super Bowl next year and kind of flop in the playoffs like they did this year, that's all on Mahomes. Like
Mahomes making 50.
I don't care if they get 32nd ranked defense and 32nd ranked offensive line. That's because you're paying too much for Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is worth that much money in his talent, but you cannot surround a team if you want consistent dynastic. If you want to win 5 Super Bowls out of the next 10 years, you can't pay a quarterback that way.
Yeah, and you got Stafford at like 44. Derek Carr is going to get 40. Mahomes,
they might win one.
Josh Allen gets 40. Mahomes is 50. Kyler wants 50. These numbers are going to be, these numbers are absurd.
I could see all those guys maybe winning 1 Super Bowl, which is great for them. They might win 1, but if those fans, when you get a $45 million quarterback, those fans are expecting you to lead a dynasty. They expect you to make the Super Bowl the next 5 years. That doesn't happen when you pay quarterbacks that much. It just doesn't. It does not. Tom Brady has made people believe that that's the case, but Tom Brady wasn't getting paid that much. I agree. I feel it's not just Kirk. I'm not saying that because I'm hating on Kirk. It is 100%. If we had Aaron Rodgers, I'd be like $45 million is too much.
Yeah, we just talked about him being a top 3 NFC quarterback, top 3 Vikings quarterback of all time. Like he's a top 10, fringe top 10 quarterback in the league right now. Anyway, so we're not talking smack about Kirk. It's just from a dynasty approach. We talk about dynasties a lot here. We love to see dynasties, but in order to have a dynasty, you need to have your cap spread out throughout your entire team.
Without that cap spread out, it's just you have to catch lightning in a bottle. You have windows instead of being like competitive every year. You don't have comfortable space. You don't create room for mistakes. You have to play perfect football, hit draft picks. Everything has to fall into place when you're paying your quarterback 30% of your cap. When your quarterback's willing to take a pay cut, 25 million instead of 35 million, so that you can add that extra piece, you all of a sudden you allow yourself to throw 3 extra interceptions because your team has the talent around you to make up for it now.
Yeah, you have the opportunity to get players on both sides of the ball that can make an impact. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Like last year, the Vikings had the 12th highest paid defense, and we were like the 30th.
But a lot of those guys were on 1-year deals because they had to make emergency deals, because that's all they have to work with is like emergency deals, because the majority of the consistent money is all in a couple players. I understand that it's very hard, and the salary cap wizards out there are very good at what they do.
Yeah, Rob Brzezinski, shout out to him.
But oh my gosh, you're hurting your team. I can't help but like I want all the players to make the maximum amount that they can, but then they also can't be upset when you're an all-time great that doesn't win a Super Bowl, or you're a team that feels like they're good every year, but they can't seem to make the Super Bowl. Well, each person takes an extra $1 million off. Quarterback or the big heavy hitters take an extra, like a pay cut. Guarantee you will make the playoffs every year, make the Super Bowl 5 out of 10 years.
Right. What if you go up to Kirk and you're like, hey, we want to stretch your deal out for 2 more years. This would give us an opportunity to go get Brandon Scherff if we did this.
Right. We want you to restructure because we have the intent to offer Scherff a massive contract. Do you want that? And if he tells you no,
Brandon Scherff next to Brian O'Neill, come on, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Come on.
You would have the best right side in football in our offensive line that I can think of in Vikings memory.
Wyatt Davis plays center?
He played center in college, but he's not a natural NFL center in my opinion.
So you bring Mason Cole back then.
Right. Yep. Wyatt Davis would end up being a backup guard, which Wyatt Davis is going to Texas to get trained under an offensive line guru. He just didn't play because he had a childish bitch boy as a head coach. But yeah, so that was it. That's all we have for NFL talk. That's all we actually have for our sports episode. So we will see you in our Marvel section. We got some good stuff to talk about. You will not want to miss it, including our Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness trailer reaction. So if you want to see that, do not miss it because we got some good stuff to talk about sports-wise. Thank you. See you next week. You look great today. GG.
GG.